Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. What are you doing, Joe? A lot of you guys are probably thinking that I mean Joe as in Joe Biden, but no, I'm talking about Joe Manchin, West Virginia Democrat Senator Joe Manchin. He was doing such a good job of thwarting the Democrats and their ridiculous spending plans, which I was calling their fiscal or financial lunacy, fiscal insanity, and all of a sudden it seems as though something changed. What is it? All of a sudden, right before the midterms, Joe Manchin has seemingly done a complete 180, and where in the past he was claiming that he would not be supporting tax increases or extra spending during inflationary times or during a recession, well, at the last minute, seemingly something changed. What happened, Joe? Do they have some video evidence of you on a particular island after traveling on a particular jet where they can so easily manipulate you right before an election? Or have you just completely lost your mind? Senator Joe Manchin, when it comes to the economy, taxes, and government spending, has made so much sense over the last year and a half, and now all of a sudden, he sounds, frankly, like a guy who's stuck between a rock and a hard place, stumbling and bumbling, unable to answer simple questions. He's done a couple mainstream media interviews, and has been asked questions by reporters on the Hill, very simple questions about his previous stances, or about the current legislation, and he looks like a deer caught in the headlights, struggling to find an answer in every single interaction. Senator Joe Manchin is turning out to be less of an economic hero, stopping the Biden administration from further tumbling the economy into recession, and more just a Democrat disaster. Another one to join the list. Let me show you guys exactly what's going on here, and then maybe later if we have some time we'll get into some of the lunacy coming out of the Biden White House. Nothing new, folks. Democrats being Democrats. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so this guy just can't seem to answer a simple question. Joe Manchin, over the last 12 to 18 months, has stopped Joe Biden at every single turn from passing irresponsible spending packages because Joe Manchin's #1 priority has been stopping inflation. His stance over the last little while has been that government spending is going to exacerbate inflation, and so we should probably chill. That's probably how we could describe it in layman terms. And now all of a sudden, all I keep hearing out of Senator Joe Manchin's mouth across the media, across all of his interviews in the media rather, is that somehow this Inflation Reduction Act, of course more government spending and higher taxes, is somehow anti-inflationary. And Joe Manchin is now going as far to regurgitate the same talking points that we've heard from the Biden administration, that inflation's not a big deal, and many Nobel laureates view inflation as transitory. And when Joe Manchin was questioned about this, well, his response was frankly pathetic. Like I told you guys, looking like a deer caught in the headlights.
So what evidence do you have that this would actually do what this legislation is promising to do, which is reduce inflation?
It's pretty much common sense if you look at the common sense. But, you know, I'm used to all the analysis going on. There's been 17 Nobel laureates who said that basically inflation would be transitory.
It's basically common sense if you look at the common sense. Alright folks, it seems as though there's a common denominator across the Joes. They're absolutely incoherent and possibly suffering early stages of dementia, although older Joe, Sleepy Joe, probably later stages. It's common sense if you look at the common sense. What are you talking about? What does that even mean? He then goes on to say, well, Nobel laureates tell us that inflation is transitory, so you know the thing. Common sense is the common sense. Is that really the talking point that Senator Joe Manchin is falling back on as he makes this 180 turn and frankly betrays his Republican constituents in the state of West Virginia? What an absolute disgrace. Common sense is common sense. Look at the analysis, like inflation is supposed to be transitory. Yet that analysis didn't age well maybe 6 months ago. Inflation was never transitory, it's still not transitory. In fact, we now have the Minneapolis Fed chairman saying that inflation is higher than we expected and spreading out across the economy.
It's very concerning. You know, we keep getting inflation readings, new data that comes in as recently as this past week, and we keep getting surprised. It's higher than we expect, and it's not just a few categories. It's spreading out more broadly across the economy, and that's why the Federal Reserve is acting with such urgency to get it under control and bring it back down.
Yeah, it doesn't really seem transitory to me, and once again, this is the exact analysis that we covered from a couple months ago, or possibly a couple weeks ago. I lose track of time, frankly, making all these videos. I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, it was either a Bill Clinton or an Obama economic advisor who claimed that most likely likely what's going to happen is that inflation is going to move from energy prices in Q2 of 2022, exacerbating inflation with basic services and consumer products. In other words, inflation is not transitory and it's still here for a little while. Joe Manchin's looking like an absolute disaster out there, and I'm just waiting for him to explain his stance coherently. Here's Harris Faulkner questioning him on the report that taxes are going to increase following this bill on the middle and lower class.
Are you saying that Mitch McConnell and others in the Senate are wrong about those numbers and that Americans' taxes are not going to go up beyond that point?
Totally, absolutely wrong. Totally wrong. And here's the thing,
right,
they're looking at it through political lenses. Look at it through the American lens.
I'm just asking
Look
questions.
At it as, I'm just answering questions.
Okay.
I want to answer these questions because what you're asking and the facts you have are completely wrong.
Well, you guys are in the same chamber, so it'll be interesting when you finally get to the, to stir in the stew here, what it's really going to be like.
Joe Manchin claims totally wrong, totally, absolutely wrong, totally wrong. Well, what's your explanation there, old Joe Manchin? Republicans are saying that Biden's spending bill is going to raise taxes on average Americans and offer evidence to prove it. The nonpartisan organization found that Americans in nearly every tax bracket will pay more taxes if the Inflation Reduction Act becomes law. In 2023, for example, Americans who earn less than $10,000 will see their average tax rate increase by 0.3%, while Americans earning $30,000 to $75,000 a year will see their average tax rate increase by 0.1%, and Americans earning over $75,000 a year will see a tax increase in the range of 0.2 to 0.6%. Gradual tax increases would continue in subsequent years, although they do moderate by the year 2031. Maybe it's 0.3% and 0.1 or 0.2, 0.6%, depending on the tax bracket. But what they're reporting on based on their study is that you will see a gradual tax increase on a year-by-year basis on the middle class. Where is the evidence to suggest that that isn't going to happen, Joe Manchin? Saying it's totally wrong, absolutely wrong, isn't an argument. Not to mention the obvious that when you increase the corporate tax rate, which once again is part of the bill, who foots the bill? The American consumer. So what we're most likely to see here is more government spending. I'm seeing reports that it's not going to increase the deficit. That's what they say, but still, possibly inflationary, definitely inflationary through the tax increase on corporations producing goods and services, possibly a hit in the jobs market as companies paying more taxes can no longer afford to either pay people certain wages or keep them on in general. But probably the most obvious, unavoidable fact, what we're certainly seeing, is that Joe Manchin is a massive, massive hypocrite. There's this clip that's circulating of Joe Manchin back in 2010.
I think my
Mr. Manchin, where do you stand on repealing the tax for families who make $250,000 or above?
I don't think during a time of recession you mess with any of the taxes or increase any taxes.
And well, it seems as though it's another thing that Joe Manchin has done a complete 180 on. Increased government spending in the middle of an inflation crisis, and increased corporate taxes, and possibly yearly stacking up tax increases on the middle class in the midst of a recession. Absolute nonsense. Democrats are claiming that this is a huge legislation win right ahead of the midterms. They believe it's going to be a massive win and help their public image, or with their current levels of extremely low public support, but I have a feeling, just a very small feeling, that the whole thing's gonna backfire and that most of what they're telling you about this bill is probably, like usual, not gonna age very well. Just like the initial claim from Joe Manchin that inflation is transitory and that it's absolutely false that this bill will increase your taxes. If it's not directly increasing your taxes, well, it's probably gonna be an inflation tax or a cost of living tax somewhere down the pike. But of course, we don't know that for a fact. We'll just have to see exactly where this bill goes and what it does. I'm just making that prediction of knowing liberals and knowing Democrats in general. And I think it's a pretty safe bet. You probably agree. That's what I got for you guys though. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe if you feel like joining the channel, or joining the community is probably a better way to say that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.